The new Warframe update to the old piece is already coming next week and it's gonna bring so much new stuff you definitely want to prepare ahead of time. So, in today's video, I'm gonna tell you how to best set up your Warframe account for the update to blitz through the new game modes and get all the juicy rewards as fast as possible. As always, big shoutouts to all our generous channel members, and now, let's jump right into it! Okay, now, very quick first things first, for those of you who have not watched the dev stream and also not seen my recap, the old piece will release on the 10th of December, that is next week on Wednesday, so pretty early this time. And, as per usual, there will also be a cinematic story quest. We've already seen it at TennoCon, and this one is gonna take round about 1 hour and 10 minutes. In order to be able to play it in the first place, you will have to finish the Warframe storyline until the Lotus Eaters quest, right? You will have to finish that, and after that you can access the old piece quest. But in comparison to older updates, there is one big difference. See, the main part of the update will revolve around the two new game modes, Descendia on the one hand and the Purita Rebellion on the other. Unlike the previous updates though, you don't have to finish the old piece quest in order to be able to play them. You could alternatively also just skip ahead and play those two game modes in an isolated fashion without any narrative connection to anything, which is a new feature that they added to give new players the ability to play together with their veteran friends right away. Just wanted to say that ahead of time. I think most of us want to play the story quest first, but this time, for those of you who are still a bit newer, there's no need to rush the story. You could always check it out right away if you really wanted to. But okay, with the basics out of the way, let's now talk about how to prepare your account for the update. And the first thing I want to talk about here would be focus. Focus is going to be one of the big new pillars of this update. We're going to get an expansion to focus schools, we're going to have new moddable focus ultimates, and much more. So, here is what that means for you. First of all, these big Tauron strikes, the focus school ultimates that we've seen already, this is not the only new feature. In addition to that, the focus schools that we already have will get a couple of new nodes. We saw that in the dev stream on Friday, so I'm just gonna put you a little footage of that on screen right now. And what that very likely means for each and every one of us is, we're probably gonna need a whole bunch more focus points to unlock these nodes in each focus school. And given that there is a cap on how much focus we can earn per day, I think for everyone out there who doesn't have millions of focus points piled up, it might be a good idea to start grinding focus rather sooner than later. Here are a couple of tips on how to do that fast. First of all, there's of course the traditional way using focus lenses. If you put focus lenses on weapons or warframes, then that means a portion of the experience that you gain with that gear will be transformed into focus points for you. Or in other words, farming focus this way is very similar to just, leveling stuff, as experience and focus are sort of the same thing in that regard. If that's what you want to do, then one thing that I personally like, because it's very, very chill, is use some AoE nuking frame, maybe Volt, maybe Saren, maybe Equinox. I like to use Gauss with Thermal Sunder and go into the Sanctuary Onslaught, because what happens here is, at the start of every new stage, you will get, I think 30 seconds it is, of maximized focus gain. And because in the Sanctuary Onslaught there are so many Eximus units that give a ton of experience, and also the enemy spawn density is very, very high, you can max out your daily focus cap this way in 10-15 minutes or something. Always depends on how lucky you get with the enemy faction and the tile set. This would be one way of doing it. Not the most efficient, but definitely the most chill. Another typical option that we see a lot is a Daro on Sedna. This is a Grineer Exterminate mission, and what we can do here is benefit from the Stealth Affinity Multiplier, which makes it that whenever you take out enemies while you're not being detected, you can get an experience bonus as high as 500%. So if this is a bit more your cup of tea, then you could, for example, use Banshee's Silence, and then blitz through the mission as fast as possible, trying to take out as many enemies as you can without alerting anyone. If you do it right, then you can get so much focus out of this. Only problem here is that it does require a little bit more skill, but it's not as chill and as brain dead as the Sanctuary Onslaught. Then the third way, and this will probably be more interesting to the later game players, would be taking out Thrax enemies. Every time you kill a Thrax, you will get 2,500 focus points for the focus school that you currently have active, and especially if you play Deviri, the Deviri Circuit, or the best game mode for this, Void Cascade on the Zeraman 10-0, then you will be showered with those Thrax enemies, giving you tons of focus. And the best part about this is, especially Void Cascade is probably the most profitable game mode in the entirety of Warframe, so it's not like you're only farming focus there, you're also gonna get a bunch more valuable stuff at the same time. These, I think, would be my preferred 3 focus farming methods. However, there is one big problem with this, and that's, that daily focus gain is still capped. So, what can we do about it? Well, there's actually one game mode that you can theoretically gain infinite focus out of, and that would be hunting Eidolons. For focus, they're absolutely unbeatable. Reason for that is that for every successfully hunted Eidolon, you're gonna get an Eidolon shard. Quality of the shard depends on which Eidolon you're fighting, and these Eidolon shards then can be turned into focus points, and the special thing here is that these focus points are considered universal focus, meaning you can distribute them across your 5 focus schools exactly the way that you want. They're not bound to any specific school. And the best part about this is they're also not affected by your daily focus cap. Now, that would be it for the focus school type of things. However, as I mentioned, we're also gonna get the new focus ultimates, which will be moddable and also have an arcane slot. And even though there's not really a lot we can do about that just yet, because all of this will probably come from new resources from playing the new game modes, one thing that I do recommend is, if you're low on endo, maybe you want to farm a couple thousand endo before the update goes live, because with the total of 25 new mods for the operator ultimates, I would say it's quite likely that we're gonna need at least a little bit of endo to max them all out and use them at their fullest potential. And before we move on, it would be really cool if you could give a quick like to the video, because it always helps big time with the YouTube algorithm. Cheers so much for your support. But alright, that would be the operator side of things and how you can prepare for this. Unfortunately though, this is not the only thing that you're definitely gonna need. So next, let's talk about Archguns. See, in the dev streams leading up to this update, we have seen 2 different scenarios in which we're definitely gonna need Archguns, and ideally a well-modded one with good damage output. And that would be, on the one hand, the Descendia game mode. Here there is one specific stage that we saw where you have to fight as a Necramech using Archguns and Arch Melee. And on the other hand, the big boss fight that they showcased in the last dev stream, which has a second phase that takes place in the orbit in Archwing mode, also using Archguns. So let's talk about which Archgun I would recommend and also how to best build it. First of all, for the Necramech type of game mode in the Descendia, I don't really think it matters which Archgun you take. Most of them are pretty good if you invest into them. But when we take a look at the boss fight, there are a couple of limitations that we have to keep in mind. First of all, this boss, as well as most others in the game, can only ever take a maximum of 4 stacks of the same status effect at the same time. So any type of Archgun build that focuses heavily on inflicting tons and tons of damage over time status effects, that is not gonna work against this boss at all. I mean, in general, damage over time builds on Archguns are not all that strong anyway, but especially against this boss, it's a double no-no. Instead, what we want to focus on here is heavy damage and fully focus on crit. As for which Archgun will be the best, of course I cannot give you a definite answer on that yet because I haven't played it, but I think some good options here would be the Mausolon, coming with a base crit chance of 30% and a 2.2x multiplier. These are pretty good crit characteristics, so exactly what we're looking for. Then we definitely also have to mention the Corvus, especially also the Corvus Prime. These two are absolutely ridiculous in how much crit they have, and also a lot of damage at the same time. So I would say on paper, these two are probably going to be the best options for the boss fight. However, I should mention though that the Corvus is a slow-firing single-shot weapon, and we can't really tell on how the damage attenuation on that enemy might or might not look like. Maybe weapons like the Corvus will end up being pretty bad too. That's something of course nobody knows yet, just saying that on paper, from the damage and the crit characteristics, the Corvus Prime should probably be the strongest weapon for this fight. As for the explosive weapons, Kuva Gratla, Kuva Ayanga, Morga and all that good stuff, I'm not 100% sure how well they will do against one big single target foe. Might be that they're very good, but might also be that their explosions end up dealing essentially nothing, so there's a bit of a question mark for those. As for how to build them, on the one hand, for the Descendia Necramech type of stage, I would say just go with whatever you like. As long as you give them a full build and you make sure that it is a good one, you really shouldn't have any issues. However, against the boss, I do see a couple of problems. See, when we're looking at the arcanes, there is a bit of a problem with the primary ones. On most Archgun builds in the primary slot, we would use like Primary Merciless or Deadhead, something to increase our base damage, but from the footage that we saw of that boss fight, it didn't really look like there are a lot of trash enemies flying around that we could kill in order to stack up those arcanes. Yes, there was this brief moment where a couple of orbs spawned, and maybe, just maybe, that would work for Primary Merciless, but then again, there weren't a lot of them, and I don't really see any base damage arcanes really being stackable in this boss fight. So instead, we use Primary Blight and Frostbite, right? Increasing crit damage and multi-shot. But also here, it might be a bit of a problem, because in order to stack those two arcanes, you need to inflict Cold or Toxin, both of which are a bit difficult to get on most Archguns, because the good ones, the Mausolon or the Corvus Prime that we previously mentioned, all of them come with base heat damage, and that means it would be difficult to get isolated Cold or Toxin on the Archgun to trigger these two arcanes either. However, on the other hand, the secondary arcane slot, that is going to be incredibly important, because here we can go for Cascadia Flare, giving us up to 480% more base damage. That is very good and easy to stack, given the fact that these Archguns deal heat. But alternatively though, especially on fast-firing Archguns, secondary Enervate is also incredibly freaking strong. As for the rest of the build, focus on dealing as much damage as possible. With Archguns, it's really not that big of a deal if you double stack base damage or any other stat. Just a couple tips from my side here would be, use the big 120% elemental mods over the 60/60s, because we really don't need status chance here. And also, deadly efficiency or even primed deadly efficiency can be very, very, very strong on Archguns that have to be reloaded often, because this gives you such a big boost in base damage. By the way, if you want to see a couple of example builds for Archguns, I recently made a video where I turned Protea into an Archgun buffer. If you want, I'm going to put that in the cards for you. It also includes a bunch of Archgun builds, so if you want, you can check it out later. But whoever says Archgun also needs to say Archwing, of course, because that is what we're going to be in said boss fight. So how exactly should your Archwing look like? Well, first and foremost, I should probably say I'm not an Archwing expert, because honestly, Archwing has been quite the underrepresented game mode for, well, basically forever. But for this boss fight in specific, I could see two Archwings being especially good, and that would be on the one hand the Odonata, which is fine because that's the standard Archwing everybody has, and on the other hand the Amisha. Here's why. First of all, the reason why we might want to use the Odonata has to do with its first ability. This one will coat you in a sort of energy shield, which theoretically should work similar like Zephyr's wind shield by redirecting enemy projectiles so you can't get hit. And at the same time, this energy shield will give you 50% more heat damage, as well as multiplying your crit damage by 2x. So in other words, with this ability on, you're A, not gonna get hit, and B, dish out more damage. Only problem with this is, similar to the wind shield from Zephyr, it doesn't make you invulnerable to all types of damage, like specific AoEs and ability effects can still get through it, and when I look at this big magnetic laser in the background, I'm not 100% sure if this skill is gonna protect you from that. That's why I've prepared a second Archwing, and that will be the Amisha. This one doesn't give you a damage bonus, but it will make sure that you 100,000% will not die in this fight. See, on the one hand, you have your fourth ability, which makes it that any incoming damage is negated and instead fills up your energy. Only once your energy is full will you be able to take damage again. Combine that with your first ability, which is exactly the same thing as Mesmer Skin from Revenant. It gives you 15 free hits and just negates all the damage, and there is no chance in the world that you're ever gonna go down in this fight. And just by the way, if you want to get the Amisha for yourself, then you can get all the blueprints for it in the Tenno Lab in your clan's dojo. As for how to build those two Archwings, to be 100% honest, I think for the Amisha, you don't even need a single mod. It should be able to completely sustain itself. But if you wanted to, some more maximum energy or ability strength to get more invincibility charges, that could make the whole thing even easier. As for the Odonata, all you would really need is ability duration, because for whatever reason, ability strength does not increase the damage buff that this energy shield ability gives you. Then, let's also quickly talk about Necramechs. As I said, if you want to play the Descendia game mode, then you gotta have a Necramech because there is a stage where you have to fight as Necramechs. And to be 100% honest, I don't think we need to overthink the whole Necramech thing here. From what we saw, it's just a normal short combat encounter, and I think all we really need to make sure is that our Necramech survives for 2-3 minutes, which I think should easily be achievable by just adding some health, armor, maybe shields, depending on which of the two Necramechs you like most. And then for the damage output, really, I think a good Archgun is all you realistically need. If you don't have that yet, specifically a well-built Archgun, then again, that is something that I would suggest doing, not only for this, but also for the boss fight that we already talked about. But for the Necramech, I think you should be good as soon as you have some survivability modded onto them. Okay, let's now talk about Prime Warframes, because there's gonna be a lot of shifting what gets vaulted, what goes in, what goes out, and you should absolutely know about this so you can make the right moves. First of all, on the 10th of December, we will get Gyroprime. She's gonna be the brand new Prime, her Prime access is gonna start then, but if I'm not mistaken, whenever a new Prime access goes live, that also means an older Prime Warframe will be vaulted for the first time, and if I'm right on the stats here, then that would mean Gauss Prime with the Exceltra Prime and the Icarius Prime will be vaulted for the first time. This, I think, is the most important info here, because Gauss is one of the best Warframes in the game, the Exceltra Prime is one of the most convenient and also one of the pretty strong primary weapons, so if you still need any of those, I would recommend trying to farm those primes before Gyroprime goes live, just so that they don't slip through your fingers. However, Gyroprime is not the only big thing that's gonna happen. Also, there's gonna be a huge Prime Resurgence event coming in December, where you're not only gonna have the standard 2 Warframes with their kit, but a bunch more. Unfortunately, the devs were a little bit unclear in the dev stream as to which Warframes it's gonna be that will be unvaulted. However, they did show us this Prime Vanguard concept art in the background, so there might be a little bit of a hint there. All in all, I would say if there is still a bunch more primes that you're in need of, then it would be a good assumption that this event is for you. By the way, they said that Prime Resurgence event would start on December 16th or 18th, so like 1 week after the update goes live. And if that sounds like the one thing that you really need, then the best way to prepare for that is to farm Aya, so once the event goes live, you can already get all those vaulted relics. Now, unfortunately here, the best and most meta Aya farm has recently been nerfed out of the game, which made a bunch of players very mad. So all I can really recommend for Aya farming right now would be run void capture missions. They have a relatively decent drop rate, as well as bounties in the open worlds. Alternatively, you can also farm a bunch of standing with your syndicates and then turn that into relic packs, because in those there's also a little bit of a chance to get Aya out of. But just by the way, which Prime Warframe and weapon would you like to see in that Prime Resurgence event? Let us know in the comments down below. And last, but definitely not least, probably goes without saying, but Platinum, right? We're gonna have a big new update, bunch of new features, and new proto-frame skins, so if you want to have all that drip, all that bling for yourself, you might want to take the fast route and just, purchase it with the premium currency. So if you're currently broke like me right here, then that could be something to look into right now. Maybe also farm a couple extra Prime Relics to stock up, to have stuff to sell. And if you want to know how to get a lot of Platinum fast and completely for free, then I already have a full video on that right here. Another massive shoutout to Niels V, Demon Lord Zell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostanix Gaming, Turtlepeer, Ondakanio2, Skyla Bowser, Mihawki, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morazaki, Shadow Lockhart, Hantagas, Patrasator, Boomia1, Mr. Games Plays, Zave, Awendai, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.